Today, I'm going to be analysing and going through Hyek's technique and showing you what you can learn from it and why, even though it might be unconventional, it might be slightly unorthodox, that actually there are some key points that you can learn from his technique. This is possibly the most requested video. When I mentioned, who do you want me to analyse, whose technique do you want me to analyse next, Hyek just kept coming up again and again. And I can see why, because for some people, especially for newer archers, it might look like his technique is kind of bad. Some people are kind of brutal about his technique. But actually, if you look closely, his technique is excellent. Obviously, it's excellent. He is the first men's individual Olympic champion from Korea. And today I want to go through a couple of things and show you this. So to begin with, I've actually got a Shoot Like Me video from World Archery, which they put on their YouTube channel, where Mr. O is talking about his technique. So he's talking from his own words about his technique, and I want to cover a couple of things here. The really important thing here, we're going to scroll to the beginning, and you can see we've got subtitles. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger for you. But the key thing that I want to go to, so we get to the start, and he says, hello, we don't need to go through the introduction. In my technique, I pay the most attention to my shoulders. That's a really key thing just to begin with. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. Then we're going to scroll on through. Many archers' postures are stretched out. But for me, it's very humble as well. But for me, maybe because I lack in proper technique, the feeling of my posture is more important than how it looks. We'll carry on scrolling through this. How my shoulders support the weight of the shot. So notice the language he's using. This language is really, really important. I want to talk about this a bit more in a second. And if we carry on scrolling through, to keep the strength in your shoulders means not struggling with the power of the bow and evenly applying its power on both shoulders. Again, crucial here. And through the arms as the shot flows. The weight is balanced here between the shoulders. So another key bit. And then later on, he says here, if you put too much weight on one arm, it can collapse the balance. So if, for example, you pull too hard, it's going to collapse the front. If you push too hard, it's going to collapse the balance on the other side. So this is really, really important. So he goes on to talk about here, essentially pushing and pulling the same amount. So what I want to talk about here, the first point is what he mentioned before, which is it's not as important how it looks as how it feels. So what this shows you is he's got a really good feeling of how the shot is balanced, how when he's expanding, when he's talking about this balance as well, he's not only talking about the expansion, the draw, but then also the expansion later. So he's got a really keen feeling of how the expansion should feel through the shot and how the draw should feel and the balance between both sides. So he mentioned earlier about kind of collapsing in and also supporting the weight of the shot through the shoulders. So what does he mean by that? So I'm going to go to the full screen here. This is really important. A lot of archers, they feel like they can set one side of the shot up and then forget about it. So the most common way that this happens is someone will start the shot down here, they'll get their set position, they'll raise up, and they've maybe been taught at one point that they need to raise up, align and get the front shoulder alignment, get the front shoulder in the right position, and then pull on this side. And they kind of think that they can just get this front alignment, get this front shoulder, set it, and then forget it, and then just leave it through the shot. Because it's in a strong position, I can just focus on this side now. And what happens if you do that, and I'm sure many people watching will have experienced this, is you go through the cycle of, I'm going to focus on my draw side, and the draw side feels good, but then you feel like you're collapsing on the front side. And then you go, okay, the front side's not feeling great now, it feels a bit weak. So I'm going to focus on making sure the front side is good, but then the draw side is weak and then it comes off. So you kind of end up going round and round in circles, and you get into this conundrum where you feel like you can't focus on two things at once, which is true. And the remedy of this is connecting both sides. And this is something I always tell my archers that I coach, is connecting both sides together so that you're not trying to, push one side and pull one side, but it's creating both things in one way. So in Mr. O's example here, if we go back here, he said, we'll carry on, you should push the left the same amount. We'll just scroll through here to get to the next bit. To balance, imagine you are a rubber band which you cut right in the middle. This is a key thing. And again, this is something I've described, I can't remember if it's on my website or in my course, but I've described this before as well. And what he means by this, imagine you are a rubber band. The title, the thumbnail of this video sounds bizarre, but imagine you are a rubber band. What does he mean by that? He means when you're at full draw, you want to feel like through the draw that you're extending this rubber band evenly both ways with that balance. And then when he says about imagining it and then cutting it in the middle, you want to feel like at this point that you have that rubber band, there's that tension. If someone cuts that band in the middle, what's going to happen? You're going to, basically, this side is going to go this way and the front side is going to go that way. And you've got that balance. The rubber band analogy is good. The one that I like to use actually is imagine you've got a rope. And this is the one I've used previously. Imagine you've got a stiff rope and it's set to your draw length. If you pull and you have that rope and you try and get, and this is really why it's important, another thing in a minute you'll see, if you have that rope and you try, for example, to draw and get that draw length absolutely perfect. So say, for example, the rope is set to 28 inches, you try and get it to 28 inches and you try and just get the rope tight enough so there's no slack in the rope, but you're not pulling it too hard. You're just on the edge of where you're starting to put tension, extra tension in that rope. So you're kind of like teetering on the edge of that. If you imagine then someone cuts that rope, what's going to happen? You're going to be here just teetering on the edge of the tension and someone's going to cut that rope and nothing happens. There's no extra tension there. Nothing is going to happen. There's going to be no dynamic release. And obviously the worst way of doing that is if you don't even have enough tension to take the slack out, then it's obviously going to be really soft. So the kind of the reason I'm explaining this, the kind of how that applies in the shot is if you come in and try and just touch the string to your face, which is kind of a common cue. A lot of beginners get taught in, beginners courses and stuff like that. They get taught, bring the string into your face and just lightly touch the face, no more. And if you do that, when you release, it's that analogy that I just mentioned where the rope has been cut and there's no extra tension and you're just going to have a soft release. It's going to be rubbish. So what you need to do is imagine you now have that rope and instead of just trying to teeter on the edge of that tension, you need to come in and carry on pulling and basically add extra tension so that now the rope is taut, and when someone cuts it in the middle, then what's going to happen is you're going to do this and you're going to have a good release. So this is a really key point, and this is what Mr. O means when he says, imagine you are a rubber band. Here, I'll go back for it. Imagine you are a rubber band which you cut in the middle, cut right in the middle. This is the key thing here. So I wanted to explain that a bit more, and this is a really, really important point. Now, before we get to the next point, I want to cover a few things. I want to show you today's sponsor of the video, which is again myself, because I can. And I want to show you my courses. If you haven't yet, we've got a couple more things to cover in this video. If you haven't yet checked out my courses, you definitely need to. So I'll go here just to show you. I have beginner courses. We'll scroll down. We have a beginner's course, an advanced course, and the amount of detail, and I'm just going to go to this advanced page for you. If you haven't checked this out, just have a read of the website. I definitely encourage you. We have, how many lessons are there? 58 lessons covering literally every single thing that you need to know, including what we're talking about today. That analogy with the rope is all in here. This is all stuff that's covered in the beginners and advanced course. And you can see all the lessons here covering literally every single thing. Posture, set position, what stance you should choose. Literally, I'm not going to cover everything in this video, but check out my courses if you haven't already. courses.onlinearcheryacademy.com. And also, this video on Mr. O's technique, I'm actually going to be showing the extended version of this. The version on YouTube is going to be the shortened version. But for my OAA members, my Online Archery Academy members, you can go to my website, onlinearcheryacademy.com, become a member. It's literally £3 a month. I wanted to make it accessible to everyone. Join here and you're going to get the extended version of this video because there's a couple of extra points on Mr. O's technique that I want to share, and I'm going to be sharing that in my Telegram group. So I'll show you that as well if we go here. So this is my Telegram group which my members can join, and basically you've got loads of videos from me, you've got previous videos if we scroll up from Bryony Pittman as well. We've got things from Kim Woo Jin here as well. We've got loads and loads of stuff, so definitely join that. If you don't want to join any of those, at least get my free newsletter. So at least go, if we go back to my website, homepage, onlinearcheryacademy.com, pop your email address in and you'll get my weekly 3 tips email newsletter completely free, no charge at all. And that's it for the promo for today. So let's get back to the video with Mr. O. The next thing I want to talk about. So someone called, we'll get rid of these things here. Someone called his technique, I saw a comment, and said his draw is a car crash. Now, this person, very unkind. Also, they need to look more closely at his technique. This is something I really want to cover here. Because he already says in that video, how his technique feels is more important than it looks. And this is a really good thing. This is a really important point that a lot of people could pay more attention to. Because I think a lot of people get kind of stuck up on, okay, my technique looks really nice. Why am I not scoring as well as I think I should be? But actually it's because they're missing the key thing. So this is what I want to show you today. We're going to go to the draw first of all. So why did someone said specifically, we're going to watch Mr. O shoot. That draw there, they said specifically that his draw is a car crash. And what they mean by that is, it doesn't look as smooth or as simple as other archers' techniques. That's pretty much what they mean by that. So for example, you will have seen archers come up where they come up here and they simply get in line and they draw and everything is really smooth and simple. And that is not Mr. O's. But think about this. What is the point of the draw? It's to get to your full draw position. Simply is an option, but it's to get there to a consistent position. So as long as you get to the same position on your clicker, and then crucially, as long as you're in this position and your expansion is consistent, what Mr. O was talking about in terms of the feeling between the two sides, then that's all that matters. And what I would say here is, watch the speed of the draw. This is something I've talked about previously, but a lot of archers spend too long drawing the bow. And if you watch the recent Olympic coverage, you'll see this. All the Korean archers are pretty quick drawing their bow, and they save energy. Watch this here. How long does it take Mr. O to raise up, draw, and come into anchor? Not very long at all. I've seen far too many archers that come in, draw, and they spend far too long drawing in this stage of the shot. Maybe they're drawing here slowly, and then they pause here and have a lot of time here, and all of that is energy that's taken that you then might not be able to use because you're tired, essentially, on your expansion and on your release. So this is the thing. When you're looking at someone's technique, especially when someone said very unkindly that Mr. O's draw is a car crash, it's not a car crash. And he's saving his energy for the important bit of the shot. So I always say, think of the release as the beginning of the shot, not the end of the shot. This is where people get confused. They spend all their energy here, and then they think the release is the end, and then they relax and they have a soft shot. Think of the release as the beginning of the shot. You don't want to spend all your energy before that. You're going to have nothing left to do anything. So this is what I wanted to mention in the drawing part of the shot. Now, let me consult my notes so I remember where we are. Mr. O is seemingly a contradiction of a few things, and I want to talk about them here. Alignment is possibly one of the most obvious. His fingers slipping off the string here, and how he draws. So we've talked about how he draws. I want to talk about his alignment now. So he already mentioned that how he feels his shot is more important than how it looks. And I want to talk about specifically alignment here. So we're going to scroll through this video and we're going to go to, there's kind of like an overhead behind view here. Now look at this. This is a really good view. So I want to talk about his alignment here. Now, first of all, the advanced course that I showed you earlier, when I was creating that, I wanted to make basically an outline. There's an outline at the beginning of the course of what are the three main things, and it didn't have to be three, but I was trying to find the universal traits of world-class top archers. What are they? And I really wanted to put shoulder alignment in that. I really wanted that as a key point that is just, you just have to have, because it definitely makes most people's shot better. The fact of the matter is, I couldn't put it in. I couldn't put it in because it's not universal. There are people, for example, Mr. O's front shoulder is a little bit more set back, you can see here. And there are many examples of this. There are world-class archers who particularly may have their front shoulder set back and don't have conventional alignment. And I couldn't put that as those three pillars of the advanced course that I wanted to put in there. So that didn't even feature, and I wish it was, like I've said. But the fact of the matter is, alignment is not the key thing, it's that balance. And what I want to show you from here is the reason for having the alignment, I'm going to go back to the main screen now so you can see. The only reason you want alignment and good shoulder alignment is because it makes it more efficient and you can hold at full draw and be more stable. And then when you expand, you can expand in the correct direction and not kind of off to one side or have anything, the collapse that Mr. O was talking about earlier, if you pull too hard and you collapse the front shoulder and all of that. So that is why alignment helps most people. But if you can achieve that balance without the alignment, then that's fine. So let's watch this clip now. We'll go here, and what I might do is just rewind slightly for you. Watch how when he comes into full draw here, so he comes into full draw, and watch here crucially, watch this draw elbow first of all. I want to make sure that's in the screen for you, yeah. So you can see the draw elbow. Watch this draw elbow, and I'm going to just put it on half speed actually. It makes it a bit more obvious for you. So watch his draw elbow coming up, and it keeps coming up, keeps coming up, keeps coming around, keeps coming around, keeps coming around, keeps coming around, and then in a second he's about to shoot, but it's solid, that elbow, keeps coming around, and then comes back. There is absolutely no collapse at any point on that draw elbow side. That is the first thing I wanted to show you. So basically that comes in and he keeps moving that draw side away from the target. So that's the first thing I want to show you now. Now let's look at that exact same shot, but now let's watch the front side here. So you can see where my cursor is. Let's watch particularly his bow arm and his bow arm elbow. So I might just zoom in for you a little bit there, make that a little bit bigger, so we can see a little bit more clearly. Watch his bow arm elbow now. He comes in, he bends it a bit, which again, so this is a bit unconventional, but that potentially allows him to come around with the draw side. And now watch the front. He's coming around with the elbow, which we just watched, and now watch the front. See how he's extending on the front, extending on the front, extending on the front. So he's doing both things at the same time, and he's having that balance. There is absolutely no collapse here. And the thing is, not everyone could do this with that alignment. But my point is, if you can get the balance and you're not collapsing, the alignment is not necessarily necessary. It's not an end in itself. The alignment is only there to make your life easier when you're expanding, and he's doing that already. So if I now go again back to the main screen, what happens for a lot of people if they have their bow shoulder set back is they would come in, they would try and pull, and as they're pulling, this would basically collapse. Or maybe they keep the front fine, they come in, and then when they're coming around on this side, they come in here, and this elbow drops back, and it collapses down. And either of those would lead to a soft shot. So this is the thing, alignment, as much as I wanted to put it in that course as one of those three main things, one of those three principles that every top archer has, I couldn't put it in because, like I mentioned, it's not. One of the points in that course is that expansion, having a consistent method of expanding through the clicker that's balanced, that is one of the key main points that every top archer has, and you need to have as well to get through that clicker and have a consistent shot, basically. So I really wanted to show you that. And now let's talk about his fingers on the string a little bit. This video already is slightly longer than I was expecting, but as you know, I like to nerd out on technique here, so I'm going to get Mr. O back up on the screen for us. And I want to talk about his fingers on the string. So let's go. I think this is the best view. I think there's actually a front view, isn't there? Yeah, this is the front view. It's slightly blocked with the... Is there another front view? No. So let's go to here. I'm going to zoom in for you. There we go. So we're going to get to full draw. We're going to allow Mr. O to draw the bow. Come in. And now watch the fingers. He comes into anchor and then the fingers slip. And particularly that bottom finger is what a lot of people talk about. And the bottom finger kind of slightly slips off. And then he carries on expanding, carries on expanding. At this point, I will zoom in slightly for you. At this point, it's debatable whether the bottom finger is fully on the string. It is quite a lot off the string. It still has some tension on the string. It's still doing a roll, but obviously it's quite minimal. And then continues the expansion and then shoots. So with this as well, we have to go back to what's the point of the fingers on the string. So again, why do I say keep the fingers curled and not let them slip off? The reason I say that is because a lot of people, if they slip off, this is why you can learn so much from watching Mr. O's technique here, because the key things are so good, even though some of the nuances might not be as good as you think. So the reason, I'm going to go to full screen here. I always mention about keeping the fingers tight and not letting the fingers slip off. The reason that's really important is for most people, if you come in and relax the fingers, especially the bottom one, and slip off, a lot of people can struggle with what I mentioned earlier, where they come in and this elbow here collapses down like this. So I'll show you now. And then they collapse down with that elbow. That is the thing that a lot of people struggle with if you allow the finger tension to lose, because essentially your fingers and your hook, pardon me, are connected to your elbow and then connected to your back. So some people find it hard to essentially keep the tension in the back, keep the movement, keep that elbow movement around the body that I showed you that Mr. O does so well. Many people would find that hard if they relax the fingers too much. The caveat here is, and this is why it's really important to balance, you have to think about what the hook is doing. If you go too deep, if you really grab, then a lot of people would have too much tension in the wrist and the hand. They would get into full draw, and then when they release, they have to kind of release like this. So there's definitely a middle ground, and you could actually argue that having your fingers too relaxed is probably better in a lot of cases than having them too tight and too stiff. You could argue that more damage is done from having them gripped around the string super tight and having to do this, because there's no way you're going to get a good release with that. And it's going to be quite hard to prevent a collapse on release with that. You could argue that allowing your fingers to slip off the string slightly, is probably the better out of the two evils. And you'll see this a lot in top archers. If you watch again the Paris Olympics replay of the matches, you'll see a lot of the top Korean archers, Mr. O's not there in this one, but they do slip off with the bottom finger, and in particular, at the full draw position, there are very few archers at the top level who have all the fingers perfectly curled and perfectly tight. They used to be in the 90s and 2000, that used to be more common, and now people are prioritizing the feeling of the elbow and coming around with the scapula, rightly so, and the fingers are a little bit more relaxed. So this is where it's really important to know what the point of each part of the shot is. So now let me check my notes here. What I've just put is hooking being super secure isn't the be all and end all, which is exactly what we were just talking about. So these are the few things that I wanted to show you today. Alignment, how Mr. O draws, fingers slipping off the string as well, which is what we just talked about. And there's 3 or 4 more things that I want to share with my OAA members in that group as well. But before we do that, those are going to be in that group. There's one more thing I want to show you today, and that's his release. I mentioned earlier, we're going to go to normal speed. And I'll share the screen here. We mentioned earlier Mr. O's draw and how he saves energy for the most important part of the shot, i.e. the release. Let's now watch his release. He comes in, and now watch this. Watch the balance. I mean, look at that release. The balance of it and also the punchiness of it is really good and also really consistent. If we go, we'll watch from the back now, from this view. We'll go here. A lot of archers, like I said before, they spend so much energy in the draw of the shot that they don't have anything left, and then the release is soft. But watch Mr. O's release here. He comes in, expanding on the back, balanced as well. You can see him extending out through the front, and then the release, the back elbow comes back, the front bow arm goes towards the target, similar to what I was saying in the video about Kim Woo-jin previously as well. And then we'll watch from this view. We'll watch from this view here. Comes up. Watch that elbow bend. Draw elbow now is coming around the body. Front arm is extending towards the target. Punchy release. Slight fade of the bow arm, but the arrow's gone. But this is what's really important. Everything, and this is on my website as well. We're going to go back to the front view. Everything you do is to serve that one important point of the shot, which is the release. So everything you do is in order to get a good release. And this is why people get confused when they watch Mr. O's technique, because they look at it and they think, oh, it's not traditional, it's not conventional, it doesn't look as pretty as some of the other Korean archers' technique, so it can't be a good technique. But the most important point is the release, which he absolutely nails most of the time. And this is why he's such a good archer. The most common, this is something to leave you with, the most common complaint I get from archers is, my technique is really good. everyone says it looks really good, and it looks good when I take a video, but I just can't get the release good and the grouping is not there. And what this means is, and I've seen this so many times, so many archers have seen this as well, or maybe that you've fallen into this yourself, which is posture-wise, you've got a nice straight body, good position at full draw, alignment looks good, bow hand position looks good on the grip, draw hand on the string looks good, everything structurally looks good and everything looks simple and neat, and you just wonder why the grouping is just massively wide, because a lot of people that do this, they then don't do anything on the release. You get to this position and then it's just, whew, and there's just a soft release. And if that is the case, you probably won't break 600 on a 70 meter round, whereas someone with a more unconventional technique, even someone whose technique looks horrible but does this, is going to way outscore you. So a slightly longer video than I'd planned today. I'm going to end it there. Check out my courses if you haven't already. Check out the membership that I mentioned if you want to see the full length video of this one today. And if not, if you just want the free stuff, go on my website and get my email newsletter. That's it for today, and I will see you in the next one.